We welcome our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up this hour. Thousands of Iranians today attended a funeral procession for President Ibrahim Raisi following his death in a helicopter crash on Sunday. Raisi, Foreign Minister Hossein Amr Abdollahian, and 6 other people, including crew members, were all killed in the crash. Across the country today, mourners waved Iranian flags and held portraits of the late president. A procession set out from a central square in Tabriz, where Raisi was headed when his helicopter crashed. Following the procession, the bodies of the late leaders were transferred to Tehran for another ceremony as part of several scheduled to run over several days.
This is the moment the body of Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi arrives in Tehran. Government and military officials rolled out a red carpet as military escort carried the coffin. The first ceremony is in Tabriz in the country's northwest, the region where the tragic helicopter crash occurred on Sunday. Thousands stormed the streets to mourn his passing. The procession continues to the holy Shiite city of Qom, where prayers are scheduled at the Fatima Masume shrine. And dozens more take to the streets of Srinagar, Kashmir region, to hold a vigil in his memory and to honor the other Iranian officials. Iraqis lay flowers and lit candles outside the Iranian embassy in Baghdad, with some offering condolences inside the embassy. Meanwhile, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization observed a minute of silence in memory of the late president and foreign minister. Flags are also flying half-mast in Aleppo, the Syrian capital, as the government observes a 3-day mourning period. As part of the 5 days of mourning, a public holiday will be declared and a large funeral will take place in Tehran, where Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei is expected to lead a prayer. Mr. Raisi is expected to be buried on Thursday night at the Imam Reza Shrine in Mashhad.
Meanwhile, Iranian leaders have convened in Tehran to hold the first National Assembly of Experts session following Raisi's passing. The Assembly of Experts, which consists of 88 members, kicked off the first session of its new term this morning. The meeting was witnessed by high-ranking government and military officials. The Assembly of Experts are saddled with the role of elected leader of the Islamic Revolution, as well as overseeing the activities of the leader. Joining us now is President Emeritus, Corporate Council on Africa, and former President, American Center on International Leadership, Partner Gainful Solutions, Stephen Hayes. Stephen, it's great to see you. Stephen is in Washington. The funeral rites for the Iranian president begins today, and I know that there were reports of celebrations on the streets of Tehran on Sunday night when, people assumed that he was dead. Some Iranians seemed to celebrate his demise. How does that contrast with what we're seeing today, in the media, people mourning, wearing black, and then thousands out on the streets paying their last respects?
Well, we haven't really seen much of the counter demonstrations for very good reason. I think the counter demonstrators would have been rapidly punished. So you're not going to see a lot of that publicly anyway. There are reports of that, but I think it's more undocumented. I have no doubt they happened. However, as far as the large crowds, I think it's partly cultural. Certainly all the mullahs would encourage people to be out into the streets from the prayer stations, everything else. And you notice in those pictures, it's almost entirely 100% male. So I think that, again, it's more cultural, religious. It's not necessarily an expression, a political expression more than is one of Iranian unity and mourning and following religious observances, frankly.
Yeah, and the Iranian aviation system, Stephen, is known for facing shortage of maintenance, which has been blamed on U.S. sanctions over its nuclear activity. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov pointed this out earlier today. He said aviation safety in Iran has worsened as a result of these sanctions. Do you agree that those sanctions are partly to blame for what happened on Sunday?
No, and the reason I don't agree with that is that we really don't know what happened. We often, especially in this day and age, contribute conspiracy more to what incompetency explains quite well. There was heavy fog. It was seems more likely to me pilot error, but we really don't know. So I'm not ready to jump on the bandwagon and say that sanctions caused it. Lavrov, of course, would be very anxious to put anything on the U.S. at this stage. Certainly, there is shortage of parts, but clearly they would have surely would have inspected the helicopter before the president is on that. So I suspect that pilot error will be the result. But again, I really don't know any more than anybody else. So I don't want to rush to judgment on that.
And, fingers are also pointing at Israel, which has denied it had anything to do with the helicopter crash. We saw the weather rescue teams had to work through on Sunday. The thick fog, as you rightly mentioned, Stephen, as they searched for the helicopter and the passengers. Now, if Raisi had not died in the crash, will the Israeli government have had any reason whatsoever to put a target on Raisi's back?
I suppose they always would have a reason, given the rivalry and the war, essentially the proxy war between Israel and Iran. But I tend to, again, would support Israel's statement they had nothing to do with it, because usually when they are involved, they simply say nothing, make no comment. Their denial was very vociferous, very direct right away. So I really suspect, again, it's more pilot error. But in terms of Israel, I think, frankly, the death of the foreign minister probably has more bearing on Israel and Iran. The foreign policy was directed through him, and I think his death is also another hardliner. Probably has more impact than the president. The president really doesn't have the power in Iran that the supreme leader does. The foreign minister had a very direct line to the supreme leader. So I think his death is going to have far more of an impact. There may be, we don't know who's going to come in the foreign ministry job. It may be someone slightly more liberal, although I think it's going to continue to be fairly hard line.
It's also important, speaking of impact, to look at Raisi's death, the impact that could have on militant groups supported by Iran. Talking Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah. I know that ideology holds these groups together, but Iranian support has been necessary for their survival. Would Iran continue to support these groups, you think, post-Raisi?
I think they will. I watched Raisi's UN speech. It was a 35-minute speech in last September, and his theme was consistently based on the Quran, based on also family values, more traditional values, and so I think that. Again, the foreign ministry and the replacement, the interim president, who also, I think Mokhtar is his name, also has a direct line to the supreme leader. So I don't anticipate any great change in this. Um, the other part that I think the president played, the other role that he played in Iran, besides being terribly repressive as a judge, and as many have said, he has blood on his hands, but most leaders do in any case. But he has also been hardline on corruption, and so there may be some respect in Iran for that regard as well.
What about the balance of power in the Middle East, Stephen? Raisi was one of the vocal figures against Israel. It was under his watch that Iran did send those barrage of rockets into Israel weeks after the attack on the Iranian consulate in Damascus back in April. How does Raisi's demise impact on Iran's position in the Middle East crisis and the ongoing peace process?
I don't think it's going to change anything. Again, the supreme leader really has, Khamenei has the final say on almost anything. That barrage would have never have happened if the supreme leader had not approved it. So, and again, it went through the foreign ministry and the Ministry of Defense as well. So I think the death of the president is going to have very little on changing the relationships in the Middle East. There may be, there was, with the foreign minister, there was some reaching out to others at times. And so, again, I think it's going to be key who is replacing the president. I guess the election will be in 50 days. And then who replaces the foreign minister? And I think that's going to be far more key, frankly, than the replacement of the president. The president speaks for Iran, but the decision-making is done by the supreme leader and those who have direct links to him. Certainly the president has a link, but the foreign minister has an even stronger link.
Stephen, I'm interested in knowing what you thought or what you think of Ibrahim Raisi, the kind of leader that he was for Iran. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, people were rejoicing on the streets on Sunday. I mean, there were firework explosions as people, celebrated his possible demises at that time, even though news media had not confirmed, that he was dead.
Well, he was a revolutionary and took part in the '79 revolution, and made very quickly became a judge at the age of 27, and became a very hardline, vindictive judge. There were tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of people who were deemed as opponents to the regime under his judgeship that were condemned to death. Also in the 2022 demonstrations, 500 people died again, and then executions have gone up 22% in Iran over last year. So I think that saying that he has blood on his hands is very accurate. I think that there were a lot of people that were happy to see him gone. On the other hand, watching his UN speech, in his own mind, I think he did see himself as a very moral leader, as I think a lot of fundamentalists in any religion see themselves as highly moral, albeit I think misdirected in many cases. I think he saw himself operating in the best interest of Iran and just hardline Sharia law. So I think a lot of people won't miss him. And frankly, given that he really had limited power, I think that he's not going to be missed a great deal by people in Iran either, regardless of the political persuasion.
And yet he was praised by many leaders. I mean, Turkey offered supports with equipments and rescue equipment for Raisi on Sunday. There were, messages coming from Azerbaijan, where he had visited just a few hours before that unfateful incident that happened. They were also mourning Raisi's departure, as well as other leaders, but nothing from the US and the UK, no clear messages, from leaders of these two countries regarding Raisi's death. You think that's on purpose? How do you think that's also being perceived in the Arab world?
Well, I don't doubt the sincerity of Turkey or Azerbaijan or others. I think the personalities may have meshed very well. I think the country's policies at times mesh. So I understand that, and I'm not critical of that. The United States did send a message of condolence, and the President Biden caught all kinds of flack already, particularly from the Republicans, but others for doing that. It's diplomatically normal, regardless of the regime, to express condolences for the loss of life, and so the United States did do that. I am a bit disappointed that I think Iran opened a door by asking for help in investigating the cause of the crash and help finding the helicopter. We turned it down. We turned it down mainly on, they said mainly on logistics, but it suggested there were other reasons for turning it down. I see that as that would have been a great opportunity to show goodwill, but we don't know the entire story of that. But had we helped, I think the president would have gotten further criticism. But I think helping in that search would have been a very, very good move. Why Britain and the United States haven't said anything stronger? It's obvious. It's Iran has been a key troublemaker from our point of view by backing those very groups that you mentioned. So it's going to be difficult, and perhaps they saw it as hypocritical of going too far and expressing condolences.
Stephen Hayes, appreciate your thoughts and your analysis on the issue today.
Thank you. It's always an honor. Thank you.
A 73-year-old British man has died and more than 30 other people have been injured in a Singapore Airlines flight from London, which was hit by severe turbulence. The Singapore-bound Boeing 777-300ER was diverted to Bangkok, making an emergency landing at 3:45 p.m. local time. Passengers said the aircraft suddenly dropped and people and objects were thrown around the cabin. The flight was carrying 211 passengers and 18 crew, according to Singapore Airlines. It offered its deepest condolences to the family of the deceased, who is yet to be named. Authorities in Bangkok say the man probably died of a heart attack. His wife has been admitted to hospital. Her condition remains unknown. Wife of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange claims judges were not convinced by the UK court prosecution's attempt to paint lipstick on a pig. Stella Assange was speaking to supporters outside London's High Court after it granted her husband the right to appeal his potential extradition to the United States on Monday. She said the case was offensive to democratic principles, asking how long it can go on for.
Haven't got Julian out just yet, but we are on the way to getting Julian out. We are on the way to victory in this battle. Look there, you're on a losing ground. You're losing this case. If you want to save any form of face, drop the case against Julian Assange. Drop it right now.
We're on a battle, but we haven't won the war. And you must take from today's victory the confidence that even the biggest imperial power in the world can be defeated. Yes, it's quite something. It's quite something when one of the highest courts in this country says to the American government, we just don't believe you.
Today marks a turning point. We went into court and we sat and heard the United States fumbling through their arguments, trying to paint lipstick on a pig. Well, the judges were not convinced. The United States case is offensive. It offends our democratic principles. It offends our right to know. It is an attack on journalists everywhere. That the courts took the right decision today. But how long can this go on for? Our eldest son just turned 7. All their memories of their father are in the visiting hall of Belmarsh Prison. The Biden administration should distance itself from this shameful prosecution.
Our French President Emmanuel Macron is headed to New Caledonia tonight to set up a mission on the riot-hit island. His visit comes more than a week of unrest over his government's voting reform plans, which have been rejected by indigenous Kanaks. Indigenous leaders say the plans, which will allow more French residents to vote in local elections, will dilute the political influence of the native people. In the meantime, Australia and New Zealand have begun evacuation of their citizens from New Caledonia following the riots. The first batch of stranded Australians were flown out of the territory on an Australian military transport plane on Monday. It's one of the 2 flights scheduled to rescue around 300 citizens who have registered for assistance as the island's international airport remains closed. According to Flight Radar 24, a New Zealand Air Force plane has also landed in New Caledonia to bring about around 50 stranded New Zealanders back home. Well, several people are trapped in the rubble of a building in Nairobi, Kenya's capital, after a 3-story structure suddenly collapsed while being demolished. A building located in a densely populated area of Nairobi came down unexpectedly while people were still inside retrieving their belongings. Rescue efforts were hampered by the extensive damage and the instability of the remaining structure. A Red Cross official on the scene confirmed 2 people had been rescued, while at least another 2 remain trapped. Authorities have ordered the immediate evacuation and demolition of several buildings in the area in response to the uncharacteristically heavy rains this season. The incident is raising questions about building safety standards and the preparedness of disaster response teams in the face of natural calamities. To East Africa now, security has been beefed up at the presidential palace of the nation. I suppose this is the Democratic Republic of Congo, beg your pardon, the capital city, Kinshasa, where a coup attempt was made on Sunday. Despite the initial shockwaves, local media is reporting life has resumed with traffic flowing, offices reopening, and schools functioning normally. The aftermath of the attack, however, leaves a trail of investigations and security measures in its wake. Images from the presidential palace on Sunday depict a scene of chaos and violence with bullets, casings, bloodstains, and shattered glass littering the ground at the palace entrance. The attack was reportedly instigated by self-exiled opposition figure Christian Malanga, who was killed after resisting arrest. The Congolese army disclosed that a total of 6 individuals were killed during the incident, including 3 assailants and their leader, Christian Malanga. Around 50 perpetrators have been apprehended, among them 3 Americans, one of whom is identified as Malanga's son. The top United Nations official for Somalia, Katrina Lang, has visited Puntland, where she discussed the world body's support in areas such as local development and national dialogue. As part of her continuous farewell visits with Somali leaders, the UN Special Representative is speaking in Puntland's capital, Garowe, following meetings with the President, Abdullahi Deni, and members of his cabinet.
I'm particularly grateful to President Deni for taking time out of his retreat. He's having his first retreat with his new cabinet today as they talk about the development plans and how they're going to take them forward. And that was one of the topics we talked about, and the role of the UN will play in supporting their various pillars of their development plan. And I'm glad to say he's got some high ambition there. I felt confident that there may be a way forward, and I, of course, offered the UN Good Office's role to support him on that.
Marking the World Bee Day 2024, the Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization, Chu Dongyu, is urging young people to learn more about bees and pollinators, including traditional and modern high-tech beekeeping, to safeguard the vital role the small creatures play in agriculture, ecological balance, and biodiversity preservation. World Bee Day was established in 2017 by a United Nations resolution at the proposal of the government of Slovenia to promote actions that governments, the private sector, organizations, civil society, and citizens can take to protect bees and other pollinators and their habitats, promote their diversity, and foster sustainable beekeeping practices.
It's so inspiring to see so many young faces, especially as this year's theme, Be Engaged with Youth, is dedicated to our young friends. Bee has long been a symbol of the productivity and the well-organized teamwork. About 75% of world food crops rely on pollination. Pollination increases the quantity, quality, and the diversity of our food and also non-food agricultural products. Producers, this means replacing harmful agricultural practice with pollinator-friendly practice. For the beekeepers, it means promote the sustainable use of locally adapted bees and plants. And for environmentalists and decision makers, it means put the policy in place that ensure the harmony between agricultural environment and the bees population.
But if we are going to reach the goal of preserving 30% of the earth by 2030, we have a long way to go about the importance of bees and pollination in conserving biodiversity and also fighting climate change.
If you're in Dubai, stop by. Hundreds of people flock into the Mall of the Emirates on Sunday to take part in the 5th edition of the Dubai Snow Run. Runners were seen warming up ahead of the race before dashing for the finish line on the snowy pistes of an enormous indoor ski resort. The Dubai government's press office said more than 600 runners from 69 different nationalities took part in the annual snow run in a post on X. According to Visit Dubai, the race is open to fitness enthusiasts over the age of 15. Participants can run up and down the indoor slopes of Ski Dubai, where temperatures are as low as -4 degrees Celsius.
What a nice event. So good in summer. Racing in ice. We love this. This is like my 4th year doing this, and I'm in for more. Amazing experience, good vibes. Everything was just on a high note, and we appreciate it. The Dubai Sports Council, the Ski Dubai, and everything. Thank you, Al-Fatem. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
A lot of people came here today for a snow run. They had fun, they ran, they competed together, and now all of them, they're happy, they have their medal, and hope to see you again in Ski Dubai.
It looks like fun, no doubt. It also looks really challenging. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani.